All right, everyone, thank you for coming today. This is our Women in FinOps series, and I think it's important to talk about the word in FinOps. We always talk about FinOps teams, and it could be the people that are dedicated doing FinOps, or it can be the folks that are adjacent, like our SREs, our finance teams. And so when we say the word women in FinOps, we mean everybody. It's inclusive. And so the idea behind this series is to start giving like a platform for women to have a place to talk about what their role is and how they intersect with FinOps, and just be able to get some more subject matter speakers in this space. And so I call that out because we're always looking for more women that would like to be part of the speaking series. We're trying to do one once a month, and so forth. So if you're interested, let me know. I think before we get started, I just want to talk about the code of conduct. So just remember, as a member, or if you're coming into the FinOps Foundation as a guest today, we always want you to contribute, but be respectful, treat others the same way you want to be treated, that nice golden rule. We do have a very strong no sales pitch. That means not direct messaging people before or after the call, trying to sell any service. So please keep that in mind. So without further ado, I'll tell you a little bit about the agenda. So Jelena is here today. She's going to be our women speaker. She has a background in engineering, and she's going to share a little bit about that. I'll tell you a couple ways just to get involved, just some tips and tricks, and then we'll go into some breakout rooms. That's really dependent on how much time we have, and then we'll kind of come back together and wrap it up. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Jelena. Jelena and I have known each other for, well, about 8 years, I think, now. We both previously worked at Pearson. Sometimes we're in totally different organizations, and then when I was leaving there, we were under the same organization. So I've got to see her work afar, I've got to see her work closely together, and I've got to see you like move through a lot of different roles and leadership positions as well, which has been amazing. So Jelena has over 20 years of experience. So she's been a Unix engineer, a data analyst, IT project management, done DevOps, and then now is leading SRE teams. She did that at Pearson, leading many SRE teams, and has recently joined Iterable. What are you on, week 2, 3 there?
Week two.
Okay. So we're gonna dive into a little bit about that. I think one of my favorite things about you is you're always advocating for women to advance technology careers. You do that by mentoring others, but you really also target like younger generations and how to bring them up. I know I recently did a volunteer thing with you. We were working with like, what was it, like 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds and teaching them engineering concepts that they could relate to. So I love that. You have founded Here Technology Collaborative, which is really a community in itself that is working on closing the gender gap, and you provide a network for community space for women to kind of get together and share insights. So I absolutely love that. So my first question, beyond this, tell us a little bit about yourself and like your journey and how did you get here and what the 20 years been like?
Oh, thank you. You know, I was thinking about this, as I was attempting to prep for this session, but for a very long time, as you know, I was an individual contributor, and part of that was that I felt I had to be ready to be leading people and stepping into this space. But I became an engineer as a systems administrator a long time ago in data center space, and if I back up just a little bit from there, when I was in college in Missouri, I was invited by some of my friends to apply for a job in the computer lab. And so I was a management information systems major, and I really was not good at coding. Like, it was really hard for me. So, when I accepted that job, what I really found is that I enjoyed solving problems with individuals. And so when I got into the tech and, fast forward many years, data center, even though I wasn't a software development in the background, I really enjoyed the infrastructure side of it. So I was, as you implied there, I was a data center engineer. I moved into IT project management and really kind of got to work on my soft skills during that journey. And then 3 years ago, I kind of had, I don't want to call it a crisis, but I just needed a different challenge. And so I applied for a job to be a site reliability engineer. And lucky me, they took me, and, I got to become an engineer. And, I was never an expert at being a site reliability engineer, but just enough to learn the business. And then, I came into the leadership role 3 years ago at Pearson.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think I was even on your interview panel, and there was a lot of discussions about, there's this checkbox sometimes when you're interviewing people, and oh, do they have 4 or 5 years of coding? And it was interesting with you because maybe on paper you didn't have all of that checkbox that everyone thought they were looking for, but you had such leadership talent, and that's what the organization needed really badly. And I don't know, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I know you've interviewed and hired a lot about thinking outside of the checkbox.
And going into that interview, there's a whole lot of background that, we don't even need to go into. But I was adamant that I'm not going to go and cram, what does it mean to be a cloud engineer, and go cram, days and months worth of AWS classes so I can set myself up, and fake it through the interview. So to me, it was really important that I was authentic of what I bring to the table. And, coding was not one of it. But what I tried to show, and, luckily some of the folks in the room knew that, is that I have potential, that I can show a track record of being successful in a number of different roles. And so my approach to this role was no different, that, you have to look at me as a human being, a person, and everything that I bring to the table. And you know what, maybe just trust the process. So I am not, I am one that, I understand there are certain roles and certain times where we have to look for some seniority in that role. But, we as an organization really need to identify our priorities and hire according to those priorities, and, not worry about this checklist every time.
Yep, 100%. As you transition to the SRE manager space, I mean, we were doing massive migrations at that time. What surprised you about that role, and where do you feel like you played a big role in like influencing the direction?
You know, that was a tough transition. So not only, I became a manager a month before COVID shut down. And, so that was really hard for me because, all of a sudden, so much of what we do was based on relationships. And I entered this world of myself and all my peers who had pre-established relationships. So I did struggle, a little bit in, not in a sense of leading and being a manager, but just in a sense of having a voice at that table. But, what I brought to the team, there was never a shortage of big projects to do where I was at. My portfolio for the AWS spend was, over $1 million in that space. I had, a huge Mongo Atlas presence, but I never had to be the technical person in the room. I was surrounded by amazing engineers. So what I brought to the table is, building a team, building a culture, and then, acknowledging with the team, like, hey, this is the finish line, and then helping the team break the steps into what does it take to get there. So it's really just kind of, providing the direction, guardrails, but letting the smart people, smart engineering folks do what they do best.
Yeah, that's great. You talk about a lot of the relationships. I kind of forgot that, yeah, you took that role right when COVID had hit. You had a relationship with the FinOps team, the FinOps organization, as you were on the SRE team working with them. What was that relationship like? You can tell us the good, the bad, the ugly.
I'm gonna say it was a really good relationship. So if I go back to the time when I was an engineer, and I like to joke every once in a while, like back in the day when I was really amazing. But, I remember the times where I had to, negotiate some pretty big contracts by myself, like as an engineer. And yes, I got some management support, but again, I was doing the hands-on work, and then I was trying to do that, and it was really hard. So back, fast forward to when we had a FinOps team at Pearson, what was really great is that, if there was a big contract negotiation, I could lean on the FinOps individuals or the team to help me with numbers. And Ashley, you helped me with my PowerPoint. That was great. I did notice in the previous conversation, you also mentioned that, you're like, hey, I'll help you with a PowerPoint. So you did help me. And also, then taking back this cost and breaking it down, to the businesses, because often, we negotiate at this high organizational level, but the chargebacks and that. So that was one part where I really appreciated. In other spaces, when we have our customers call, and sometimes the customer wonders, why is my bill, X amount and everything, I could talk to them about, the product side and, the ebb and flows of the busy season and not the busy season. But I could pull in a FinOps expert to really, focus, build a dashboard and provide a visualization of some of these expenses and really, break down that story into something more tangible and show and everything. So I really, I appreciate that. And, there were some hard conversations that we had to have with the FinOps team. There would be times where we would go into the tool and the tool would say, hey, if you do ABC, you can save thousands of dollars. We know that product owners, they love savings. And then we would have to say, well, but now you have to hear the story. So at times, you see the numbers, but then, we would have to come together as a collective team, SRE, FinOps, and the software development organization and go, but this is why we can or cannot take advantage of these savings. So again, they were there with us, walking that, shoulder to shoulder, whether it be, helping to break down or breaking the bad news to the software developers on why can they save money, and maybe they can put it on their roadmap on, doing what they need to do to prepare their stack to take advantage of some of these savings. So as you can tell, there's many different ways where FinOps team helped, good news or bad news.
Yeah, that's great. I remember one time you and I were working on something, and it was like, everybody being like, this is the right technology we should use. And I'm like, I believe you, but I got to go convince that finance person to, and I remember I was working on that, and it was just interesting because it's like, both are right, but how do we get to a partnership? And I think one time I said, we could just do it, but we'll be asking for forgiveness later, which our boss loved that. And I'm the type of like, always ask for permission. So that was always like I think a struggle, within our organization too.
It was. I had everything ready, everything done. And then Ashley just comes in and like was asking all these questions. It was like, oh no, not that. But luckily
we got through it. We made it happen.
Yeah,
No, that's great.
Always
I think
good
the other thing
questions.
that was hard with like a FinOps role, like think about with you're running SRE teams and you were running many pizza SRE teams, and they're getting told from product teams the features, and they're getting told security incidents, and they're getting told, oh, FinOps optimization business cases. Like there's so many things coming into your teams. Like how did you triage that, and like how did you help your individuals like triage that too?
So I don't have this, here's the 3 steps that I would take, because I very much so adapt to the team and to the product. I like to think of myself as this, chameleon in this space, because there are some engineers that are, they're super independent. They are very good at, running their products, teams, all of that. So I would be there and be a fly on the wall if they, need some help. But, how I helped is really setting boundaries, and be there to protect my team, to protect my engineers. And, so in some cases, it would be, they don't need me. Or I would say, hey, I see this situation is, getting to be a little bit contentious. Let me know if you need help. But at other times, I would have to like really step in the middle of the meeting and go, no, this, if we go back to the FinOps topic, I remember we had these regular calls with our software development teams, and I had one product owner who wanted to have a whole separate meeting to discuss, dashboards that FinOps was providing and all of that. And not only did he want a separate meeting outside of the existing meeting, but he wanted all the same players in that other meeting. And I was like, no, so the way I would protect my team in that sense, if you want a separate meeting, I will be in that meeting. My FinOps analyst will join me in that meeting, but I will not pull in the whole team into that meeting. Or if you want to have the whole team, here is the space. So that's just one of the examples. But I would support the team if they're doing a presentation, or they are, working on a big migration of some sort and everything. I would just ask questions to, so they can talk through their approach to the stakeholders, and rather than telling them you need ABC, I would ask a lot of questions and help them, make sure that they are addressing all the different points.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that that's something that I think all FinOps people need to realize as well, is like that everyone does have priority, and that there needs to be a time and place to have certain calls and certain conversations. And I had learned that too, like, we would never want to go show a product owner like, hey, here's how this application is doing and you've got this much waste, like without showing you first, right? Like that would put you in a really awkward position. And so that was something that, I think we had to kind of work together and figure out what was appropriate all the time too.
Right. The way I always looked at it, it had to be a partnership. Nothing I do should ever blindside the FinOps team, but also, it goes the other way around. Nothing that FinOps puts together for, the internal customers or external for that matter should be a surprise to us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great. So shifting gears a little bit, another concept that you and I have talked a lot about is finding your tribe. Can you describe that to everyone, what that is? And
It's your people. It's really so for me, what finding a tribe is, it's the group that you can trust. It is the individuals that are not only going to be there telling you you're amazing, but it's the people that are also going to hold you accountable to who you want to be. But also people that, can, and that can relate. Sorry, it took me like a second there to find that word. In technology, I've been in this for over 20 years, and you will see that when you go to the infrastructure side, to the technology side, the number of women drastically is reduced in that space. And often I was on the teams where I was the only one. If there was another woman there, that was like amazing. So how I found my tribe more than anything didn't work on my team. It was people that were, and so when something would happen, we'd take a walk, and when I would say, oh, you would not believe what happened, like they could relate. And so for me, that was really important. And, just a group of women where you had a sense of belonging. you're kind of walking the journey together, and you're there to support each other.
Yeah, I love that. I think I always thought about like the tribe needs to have like a mixture of like your champions and your challengers, right? Like so people that are gonna like lift you up on your worst days, but also like allow you to bounce ideas off of you and tell you things too, which I think is really important that you just don't surround yourself with, but people. I mean, it's great to surround by you people that are gonna hype you up, but you need to be challenged by people too.
Right. It's I think Adam Grant, he has, like that term, it's the good challenger, the positive challenger. And really, anybody can have a hype squad, but sometimes we don't need a hype squad. We need somebody that's gonna be a devil's advocate for you. And I've been lucky enough to have some amazing women around me that did that for me. And heck, you being one of them, Ashley.
I think the other thing you talked about in the last or the last one of these things is around like finding women that lift you up. And I think one thing that you always challenges me is like when you progress in your career to always reach back down. And to be honest, sometimes that's something I didn't really think about. I was so like driven and like I just need to keep moving forward. And sometimes I get a little resentful, like, well, I didn't have someone lifting me up that was a woman too. And so I'm kind of curious of like, your thoughts on that, and how do you keep that at the forefront?
This is, so how do I keep this at the forefront? I think that, so, I tell people, you see me here and now, but this is 20 years of hard work, a lot of conferences, a lot of books, a lot of therapy, whether it be with, a real doctor or with my tribe. So you see, a 20-year long journey here. But some parts of this is that, and I didn't have anybody really that I could look up to. And, when I started my tech journey, I was a mom. At times I was a, mom of one, to a single mom. And, I'm now a mom of a 24-year-old, 21-year-old, and a 9-year-old. So I live in like this 2-generational life. But had I known some parts of this 20 years ago, this journey would have been a lot easier. And so I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm answering your question here, Ashley. I would be really disappointed where at times I would reach out to this, a director or a VP in my workspaces in the organization. And, I worked at other places, not just Pearson, even though Pearson, and I wouldn't hear anything back. And like, that's very disheartening, because sometimes you're just trying to find somebody that can tell you, hey, it's like, I know it's hard, but you can do this. Like, you can survive this. And, I've been lucky. I've had a lot of, good people around me. I wouldn't be here without them. But again, I felt like for such a big part of my career, I couldn't find anybody in my space that I could relate to that would be able to tell me like, you know what, with time, things get easier. And so I wonder, the reason I reach, I'm a first line manager. So, me reaching, it's like I have engineers, but I reach out into the community because I want to have other women and young women in college and young girls to know that, like, look, tech is fun. Look, she's doing this and she's laughing. So that's why I reach out. I don't have far down to reach, but I reach out.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think too, like, again, going back to like being tech field and surrounded mostly by males at times, if not only, has there been an example of like a male being an ally in tech that's really stood out, and like what have they done that stood out to you?
I do. Oh my goodness. I was really lucky to have a couple of really good allies. And one of them, he was an empathetic leader. He was that way before COVID made other leaders be empathetic leaders. And he encouraged me to be authentic and to be myself. And then, I have another ally that, really, he had invited me to be at his table a couple of different times. And I think during the times where I didn't think I belonged to that table, that I had a voice at the table, he would reassure me that yes, I belong there. Yes, that while my insights are different, that they are valuable, and stuff like that. So I think that's really again, being encouraged to be authentic, and then that I add value at the table are the two things.
Yeah, that's really great. I love that. I think this is a good call out because I think sometimes some allies don't know what they can do, and sometimes it's the littlest things, right, that make the biggest difference, and just almost like stepping aside and like making that extra effort is like so important. I remember being in the hallways one time and someone being like, "Hey, you should be in this meeting," and like pulling me in, and it was like the littlest thing that was so impactful that day.
Right. And as an ally, it's also okay to say, you know, I don't get it. Like, you know what? I don't get the struggle that you're going through, but I'm here to listen and let me know if I can do anything. Like, um, one of my more recent managers at Pearson, you know, when we were, through the whole Me Too movement and, the rest of the unrest in the country, the Black Lives Matter. And, I had shared with him that I really feel that the underrepresented groups, like, we spend so much time educating those around us about simple things that I was like, it is exhausting at the end of the day to be educating y'all.
Yeah.
And he was, and he said this with good intent. He's like, Jelena, it's okay to just take a break sometimes. And I said, yes, but I'm like one of very few. So if I take a break, like, we don't have time to take the foot off of this pedal. Like, we gotta keep going. And then he just said, he's like, you're right. I don't understand. He's like, I'm sorry, but I really just don't even know how to help now.
That's so
And that's
funny.
okay.
But yeah, it's okay to say that and okay to ask for help too, because like
Yeah.
that's that we know. I think during that time too, the other thing that you did as in your SRE manager is you kind of brought, like, that's a good example, but you brought your diverse background into like helping fix operational issues, one of them being how we hired sometimes. And I guess maybe I'm kind of curious if you can like talk a little bit about why you think, having someone with a diverse background, whether it be a female or another background, um, is important in like those operational changes.
So, what we often hear is, this need to hire senior engineers. And, like I said earlier, I get it. Sometimes, that's what we need to do. But, what I try to to share with my peers is that, this is a multi-step approach. First, in order to bring a more diverse talent to apply for your role, we need to really zero in what are the needs of that, that individual needs to bring to this team. So, like, don't have this huge list of million things that you would like to have, but like truly identify what are the hiring requirements for the job. And then, the importance of being patient to ensure, and this is a hard one, because being patient could mean by the time you get that diverse set of applicants, it's hard to get them all to the table at the same time. So, but the goal is always that to bring a diverse set of applicants to my panel, and then let the panel decide, who the most qualified is. And the education part in this is that you know, when you start talking with individuals about you know, diverse hiring and what it takes and everything, you know, the pushback is, well, I need to have the most qualified person. The implication is, well, but that's a guy. And that's not the case, you know. So I try to say, well, yes, we always want to hire the most qualified individual, but let's ensure that we have a mix of people that we are and you know, the different thought processes, you know, I think it was probably I know Michelle Needler. I think she was one of my you know, colleagues, peers, and friends now. You know, she always said that there's this like the value of two. So if you have a team and you only have one underrepresented person on that team, that's really hard. So try to build up the team to where you have two. So if it's, you know, a one woman, you know, work really hard on bringing another one woman in. So those are some of the things, you know, like being very intentional about how you form the teams and panels. Like, I mean, I could go on and on about hiring, but again, it's about a diverse set of applicants that the panel can interview.
Yeah, I love that. And I think kind of going back to like making sure you're writing those job descriptions too. We talk about in the FinOps world, finding a FinOps practitioner is like a unicorn because they've got to be cloud, business savvy, technical savvy. And I think it's kind of us going back when we're writing those job descriptions, like, no, what I really need is someone who's very good at reports. What I really need is someone who kind of have executive level conversations. And maybe it's figuring out that one skill set you need and like taking the time to build up the rest of the skill sets. And I think that's the one thing I like the most about this field is that I feel like it is all teachable, right? And so if we're constantly trying to get this one unicorn, we may not be considered diversity because we're sticking so hardcore to that checkbox that we talked about earlier.
And that's, you know, really, you know, kind of going back to when I interviewed, you know, taking a look at this individual and not so much identifying that what they know now in the moment, but, you know, their ability to learn. I mean, that's really what you're hiring for.
100%. I do want to open up to the group. I have a couple more questions for you, but I want to open up to you all if you have questions for her before I dive into those last two.
Do you want us to just ask? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead and ask. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
So as someone who is fairly new into the FinOps space, I also work with an on-prem data center team. Are there any specific things like outside of what you had already recommended, you know, just making sure everything's transparent between the engineers and there's a good collaborative relationship that you would recommend thinking about?
I mean, I would build a relationship with the teams. I really think that you know, it's okay to, you know, approach the team and just get to know them and get to know their stack. I understand, you know, as a FinOps analyst, you have many products and all of that, so you can't, you know the full stack and everything, but at least just knowing a little bit about the product helps usually. That would be my advice. But Ashley, what about you?
No, I like that too. I mean, don't go over and say you should resize this, you know, to, you know, R5 whatever, and it's like they're like, we're going back to school testing right now. Like, you know, get familiar with the product so you know their cycle and what they're doing, and you know their roadmaps. Like that was always encouraged of like, okay, well, I'm not going to go buy reservations for you right now because you're looking at, you know, upgrading this whole thing or, you know, change it all to serverless. And so I think that's where some teams will come in and see those wins in terms of savings, and the real wins are the relationships, and those are going to be like more long lasting than I think the savings will be.
Thank you.
You also have another question?
You know, I wanted to add to that, and Jelena, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for sharing your journey with us. This is really, really special to us to be able to hear more voices, and so welcome and thank you. I did want to add to, just as you're getting new, as you're getting into the FinOps space, if you're new, I think it's really important to be in self-assessment mode constantly, because one of the things that I find is that because we do have to sort of straddle these sets of skills that are so different, whether finance or technology, business management, infrastructure, those things, there are bound to be gaps, and finding your mentors where you have the gaps specifically, and being really intentional about getting that support, and frankly holding your mentor, if you're assigned one, accountable for giving you the feedback that is going to help you grow. I think that's one thing that I would do differently, that I wouldn't tell my 20-something-year-old self when I was just getting into infrastructure. I would say, don't wait for your manager to tell you how to grow. Find out what the skills are that the experts have that you admire, whose work you want to do, and find out where the skill gaps are. Start taking those measurements, and it may be multiple mentors. And I think Jelena made some very good points, and Ashley too, about coming back to finding your communities and your tribes, because they may not be on your team. And just having that extra set of voices to help you in that assessment, without judgment, without fear of competition, right, without trying to sell you something. You will run into all kinds of different competing agendas that you may still be able to find mentors from a vendor or from a peer, but everyone's got motivations for how well they mentor you.
I do, everything you said, and I see Stacy said that without fear of competition. Yes. I remember a long time ago, when I started in this field, there was this belief that only so many of us can make it up the chain. So there was this scarcity mentality. Abundance. There is so many places for all of us to be there. So rather than thinking, I think this is another reason why we don't have maybe as many women that stay in tech, is because this competition. No, we really just need to help each other out, lift each other up. And because there's so much room that every one of us can, if you have a choice, you want to be, going up the career ladder, you can do that. If you want to be an individual contributor, you can do that. I was an individual contributor for many, many years. I have my own reasons, but, there are people that, have been in this journey for the same amount of years, and heck, they are directors and VPs, and we all make our choices, but there is room for everybody. Yes, what you said there, and one more thing to add to Deanna, am I getting your name right?
Dina,
I'm so sorry.
Thanks for asking.
Dina, the other thing that you said about education, so I, like I said, I was an engineer and project manager and a data analyst, business analyst. None of those roles I knew they even existed. I would be in one role, and the people that I'm interacting with, I would go, oh, I kind of like what they're doing. And then I would go ask questions like, what are the skill sets? And figure out if this is an area I want to dig into a little bit more. And that's how I built my career, not because I had this plan, it's because I kind of saw what people were doing and I liked it. So.
Thank you guys so much. That was actually really great. Thank you so much.
I kind of want to echo something that you just said too, Jelena, is that there's room for all of us and there's abundance of room. I think one things that we often forget is, one, it's okay to ask for help within our jobs, but also you don't always need to do everybody else's job too. I just talked to another very, very close friend last week who just gave notice at her job. And it's just something that she was burned out with. She was asking for things, they weren't delivering. And this is not unique. And I think probably all of you have also heard these stories before, because I've heard it multiple times. They're replacing her with 3 hires. 3 people are going to do the job that one woman was doing, and it's just, she's very competent and great at her job, but there's room to grow. We have the room to build these other roles too, but let's not wait for us to leave to do it. Like, it's good to, like, great, bring those people on while you're there, and then maybe you can benefit from learning from them, they can benefit from learning from you as well.
Yeah. And
Jelena said something too about setting boundaries, and that really rings a bell for me too, because it's not just about protecting your team and holding their boundaries. It's about knowing what yours need to be in order for you to do your best work. And so often we find ourselves spilling over into someone else's job to fill a gap, to make sure a customer's happy, to hit a goal. But really, when each time we do that, we actually are not communicating what's wrong in the process, what's wrong in the system that creates this potential for burnout. And I think that the best thing that I've got from these communities, from my community, I'm in a similar group in Portland, Women in Tech, is that I just get friends who remind me that, no, actually, you're still doing more work than, your average male peer, and it's a good check. We shouldn't kid ourselves into thinking that if our company says we value equity and we have a diverse culture, we can't just take it as fact that they're also going to behave in that value. Because the reality is, nobody has the practice, especially when you land at a company where you are an only person of color, only marginalized person, only gender minority. Whenever that happens, the HR person or the talent acquisition person who promised you that they were going to have the most progressive culture doesn't actually know what the real challenges are, and doesn't actually have evidence. Otherwise, there would be a lot more diversity on our collective teams. So, yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. And I think that's going back to like the importance of tribes. It's like, at least for me, I can get in my head a lot, right? So if I at least have one other person to talk to or bounce something off, Stacy knows as well, then I can get out of my head in that moment, right? And so I was going to do the breakout rooms to kind of continue these conversations, but I think that we've kind of flowed into those breakout things. I will probably just ask, does anybody want to share an experience with their tribe or building a tribe, or like how they've done that? I'm curious of like how that's went for you.
I can share, because my tribe is other FinOps ambassadors. And so they've been so good to me. And actually, the males are some of my biggest counterparts that support me and remind me that I am worthy of something, or if I am underpaid, or if I'm not valuing myself. They're the ones who are my biggest cheerleaders and remind me of that. And whether I go to them because I wasn't sure of an opportunity, or am I going to be able to handle this, or they're the first ones that are there, and say, hey, we'll work through this together. What do you need? What do you need to learn about? What's new if it's a new cloud provider, or I haven't done this before? And so I think I was talking to someone the other day about that. Last night was a really rough night for me personally, and I almost didn't go to the FinOps virtual. And I got there, and Dan, we had a great conversation about forecasting. And I said to them, I was so glad I joined, even though I was on the phone, because it really re-energized me, and I needed that more than anything, because I was hitting some burnout yesterday. And so Dan afterwards private messaged me and said, are you okay? I said, I'm super stressed today. And he goes, you need to talk about it? call me if you need to talk about it. And I just kind of told them, no, I have my life coach and we're working through what's stressing me and some changes going on. And I said, but I really appreciate that. And it's like, it's so nice to have that, support of a tribe. And they are my tribe, because no matter what happens, and, sometimes when you're changing roles, or, I went through that a little while ago, they're always there for me no matter what company I work for. And that, has been essential to me. I drive Joe nuts and Stacy, and, but it's great to have, people. And Rob said the other night when we were doing the office hours, he says he loves how I always say, when I started a company, I bring all of you with me, because I really do. All of the experiences of the foundation and the people I work with come with me when I'm in a role. And I can't, thank all of you enough for that, being my tribe.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'll kind of share. I just took kind of a different role within the foundation, and be doing like more chief of staff stuff, and I have no idea what that means, for those that are also wondering. And so we've done some like Googling, what does it mean? What's the job description? And I just randomly went onto LinkedIn and I searched the title in, and I found like 4 or 5 people that are like adjacent to me somehow on LinkedIn, and I messaged them and it was like, I would love to just talk to you about your job and what you do and what this means. And I've now had like 4 calls set up with these individuals and like learned from them. And like, not that they're probably going to be a tribe I'm going to have forever, but it was like the tribe that I needed in that moment a little bit, for me to kind of, feel good about the direction and stuff. And so I think that's another big thing, is just kind of putting yourself in asking. And rejection can be hard too, where like, you said, Jelena, earlier, like asking somebody and not getting any response back. And I think in that case, it's like, for everyone that doesn't respond, kind of a little bit of their loss, and you move on to the next person too.
Yeah.
I can kind of add my perspective, and I have my video turned off because I have very unstable internet connection. But my tribe all kind of extends from my close friends from college, and a lot of them kind of went into academia to further masters and PhD. And actually this past weekend, we all met together, and a couple of my friends have decided after 10 plus years in academia that they wanted to move to a tech and private sector, and kind of didn't understand what that process is. And also like, how do I get in? And their counterparts who are in tech are male. And so there's a lot of like, what are the like, how much work do I need to put into changing their career into tech, and like and kind of like overthinking it and putting themselves down in terms of like, I don't have the right experiences, I'm not enough. And the more I talk to them, the more I realize it's like, you have so much more experience than like most people that probably have been in tech. And you just need that validation and visibility from your peers that are in there to give you that affirmation that you are more than enough, that there are many opportunities. Like, we shouldn't feel like there's this one dream job. And I always tell them to go back into like, when you're interviewing like your potential companies, really think about like who you want to surround yourself with. Like, especially if it's their first time in tech, like, do you want someone who just wants you to like have deliverables done, or do you want to surround yourself with a team that really cares about that diverse background and experiences and thought process, that welcome it in terms of like, they want to collaborate more because they value that? And so it's kind of like mind-blowing in sense that like, there's so much barrier one can put when they think about like what tech is, and the appearance that tech can be scary for women.
Thank you for sharing that story. But Suha, I got to meet Suha in June, and I think getting to see who shows up for these is one of the most exciting parts for me. Michelle just added a great coaching tip, that the obstacle becomes the way. I love that concept. We've had some applause. Sierra, good question about how to find a mentor. I'm going to just add here that if you use Slack at your workplace and there's not already a women at whatever your workplace name is channel, make one. Put in a ticket at the help desk, create one, because one of the things that we find out when we show up is that just by showing up, you may have already made an impact. Having Suha in my room when I was terrified at my first FinOps public speaking thing in person was such a relief. So thank you for that.
And you did such a wonderful job, Dina, too. I was clapping at the back of the room for you.
You were my favorite at FinOps X. When you were ever up on that stage and you said you were nervous, I think I loved you forever because it was just such an authentic moment. And so many people go through it. And even JR goes through it. He just hides it a little better, than everyone else. And he said that after you shared, he felt comfortable sharing. And I thought that is really great because a lot of us might think, oh my God, I could never go up there on that stage. And you did that and you overcame your fear, and that was amazing.
P.S. We will coach anybody that wants to be a speaker forever. I will sit with you for hours and coach if that's what it is. Yeah, I did. I mean, I was kind of on a speech and debate team once. Long story, but I was going to tell you kind of a funny story going back to Dina. I always see the woman at wherever you are. For a long time, our channel was called Woman in FinOps. And I think, Dina, you're the one that caught it. It's like, well, there is more than one woman that does this, barely, but there is more than one woman. And so when Dina caught it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was literally until I think mid-2021, it just said Woman in FinOps instead of Women in FinOps.
That's so funny.
I love it.
Well, thank you, Jelena, so much for doing this. I have one last question, which is like, you're going to a new company now. What part of FinOps are you bringing with you?
Oh, I did. This is my day 8 at Iterable, and it's a startup, but so it's a customer communication platform, and I'm in that learning stage, and I can see some potential opportunities, but you know how it is. I take the approach of asking a lot of questions, getting to know the people, why they are where they're at now in their journey, and then hopefully I'll make some suggestions there. As you know, I've already been asking you questions in the background.
Yeah, anytime. That's what it's here for.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've definitely been a big influence in my career grow up, and I just hope you all got to take a little tidbits from today as well. I'm always quoting you, Jelena.
No, it's awesome, and I do want to encourage everyone who hears this, whether now or later, like I did last one. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I am always up for, virtual coffee, 30 minutes. And, every one of these that I do, this is, my journey, my story. Hopefully you picked up something that you can relate to. But the beauty of these sessions, that Ashley is trying to do is you may not relate to me, but you may relate to that next person. And that's like really the importance of it, kind of back to, we respect each other's journey, but the goal is that we find someone that we can relate to so we can hopefully be, more successful in what we're trying to do. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you so much. Thank you all ladies and male allies that are here too.
Yep. Thanks.
JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to FinOps.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.